Hello, this is Jason. We are reading Who Was the Tuskegee Airmen? Chapter 1 to Chapter 4. Chapter 1 to Chapter 3. I hope you like it and subscribe. And the usual that every YouTuber says. Let's go on to the reading. Who were the Tuskegee Airmen? January 20, 1945. The plane was not going to make it back to the airfield in Italy. U.S. Airman Larry Fleischer shivered inside the B-24 bomber as it limped through the skies. World War II had been raging for more than 5 years. In late 1941, the U.S. had joined England, Canada, and other countries to defeat Nazi Germany and its allies. B-24 played a major role in winning the war. Fleischer's plane, however, had been hit while dropping bombs on a Nazi airbase in Austria. Two of their engines were out. The bombing doors in the belly of the planes had jammed open. The wind was roaring in at 60 degrees below zero. Fleischer had already lost a boot trying to unstick the doors. Now he was afraid he might lose his foot to frostbite. The plane needed to land soon, but where? Down below, the Italian coast was fast approaching. Fleischer and the rest of the crew scouted for a safe landing area. It was the co-pilot who found the best hope. He spotted an airfield, but it was one that didn't show up on any of their charts. We really were expecting it to be a German field, because why wouldn't it be on one of our maps? Fleischer recalled. If that were true, the pilot and crew would be taken as prisoners. But there was no other choice. The pilot carefully brought the plane in for a landing and saw that this was no German base. The runway was lined with American planes. Splashes of crimson paint marked the P-51 Mustangs as red tails. These fighter planes were famous for protecting American bombers in enemy skies. The Red Tails had saved Fleischer and his crew on more than one bombing mission. As another crewman put it, they were our lifesavers. Fleischer and his crew were so relieved. They went out to greet the approaching soldiers, eager to finally meet the Red Tails face to face, instead of in the air. What they saw was the surprise of their lives. These are all black guys, Fleischer remembered thinking. It was a complete shock. Why was it so surprising to see black pilots in 1948? Fleischer was a white guy from New York. His entire crew of 10 men was white. The only black people Fleischer had ever seen in the army were cooks and waiters, until now. The Red Tails weren't just any combat pilots. They were the famous Tuskegee. They were the first airplane pilots of color in the U.S. military. Military means the armed forces of a nation. But to Fleischer and his all-white crew, their existence was more secret than the atom bomb. Chapter 1. Two Americas. By the end of 1939, World War II had broken out in Europe. The U.S. was not involved in the fighting yet, but the military wanted to be prepared just in case. So the army had started the Civilian Pilot Training Program, CPTP. At many colleges and universities, civilians are people who are not in armed forces. The CPTP was created to teach young Americans how to fly planes. If the country joined the war overseas, there would be more pilots ready for battle. But not everyone could join the CPTP. It was for white people only. In 1925, military reports said that black men were not as smart or as brave as white men. The belief was that black people couldn't learn how to fly airplanes. But that was completely wrong. Black people had been flying since 1917. An African-American pilot named Eugene Bullard joined the French Air Force and fought against Germany in World War I. He won several medals for his bravery. In 1920, A southern woman named Bessie Coleman went to France to learn how to fly. She became the first African-American female pilot in 1921. Coleman returned to the U.S., where she gave lectures and flew in air shows across the country. She wanted to raise enough money to start a flying school for African Americans. Unfortunately, in 1926, she was killed in a tragic airplane accident before that dream was achieved. 3 years later, the Bessie Coleman Area Club was founded in Los Angeles in her honor. In May 1939, 2 black men named Chauncey Spencer and Dale White flew an old airplane from Chicago to Washington, D.C. They wanted to encourage other black people to become pilots. In Washington, they met with a senator named Harry S. Truman. Truman would become president of the U.S. in 1945. Truman said the rickety old airplane the men had flown. He said, "If you guys had the guts to fly that thing from Chicago, I got the guts enough to do all I can help you." Harry S. Truman was true to his words. Later that year, Congress approved 6 civilian pilot training programs for black people. The most famous of these programs was at Tuskegee Institute at Alabama. Chapter 2. Taking Flight. Tuskegee Institute was a famous black college founded by Booker T. Washington in 1881. In the town of Tuskegee, Alabama, unfortunately, the nearest airport was 40 miles away. There was a lot of work to do before a CPTP program could be up and running. The school rented a field to build its own airport. The first class had 20 students, 18 men and 2 women. The students had to mow the field and create a runway. They built a hangar. A hangar is a building where airplanes are kept. It had rooms for 3 small airplanes called Piper Clubs. The students also built their own classrooms. The first part of learning to fly is called ground school. In ground school, students learn how to check the weather and how to read maps. They also learn the different parts of an airplane and how each one works. Chief pilot Charles Alfred Anderson was in charge of the first group of students. Anderson was one of the first African Americans to ever hold a pilot's license. Everyone called him Chief. The student made national news when the entire class passed the written test for ground school. No other class in the area, black or white, had passed everyone. Soon, the school needed a bigger airfield and newer planes. Help came from a surprising source, the First Lady of the U.S. States. Eleanor Roosevelt was the wife of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. She had her own weekly radio show and a newspaper column. She traveled the country to meet with struggling Americans. Eleanor Roosevelt loved flying. She had been friends with the famous female pilot Amelia Earhart. The First Lady was very interested in the civilian pilot training program. She thought women and African Americans should learn to fly too. In March 1941, Eleanor Roosevelt stopped at Tuskegee Airfield. She wrote in a column about her ship that the training was in full swing. "These boys are good trained and are good pilots. I had the fun of going up in one of the tiny training planes with the head instructor and seeing this interesting countryside from the air." The instructor of Chief Charles Anderson, a picture of Chief and the First Lady smiling from the cockpits of the plane, made newspapers across the country. That further went a long way towards showing that white people and that black people could indeed fly. Though through Eleanor Roosevelt, a charitable fund lent $175,000 for a bigger airfield at Tuskegee. It was called Moton Field. After the second president of Tuskegee Institute, Robert Martin. Chapter 3. We Need More Men. In the fall of 1939, Adolf Hitler's Nazi army marched into Poland and seized it. They made Great Britain and France declare war against Germany. Why didn't the US of America immediately help to stop Hitler? The country was still suffering from the Great Depression, with millions of people out of work. There were also some Americans who believed the US should stay out of the conflict, being fought so far away. Then on December 7th, 1941, the Japanese bombed the American naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The Japanese were allies on the same side with the Germans. A day after the attack, the US joined the war against the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan. In 1941, the US military had only about 1.5 million soldiers. Now the army needed nearly 6 times that number. Basically 9 million soldiers. Even if every able man between the ages of 18 and 45 joined the fight, it still would not be enough. For the first time in US history, the country would call upon women and minorities for help as never before. Join us, this was the poster. Join us in a victory drum. In World War II, many battles were fought in the air, so the US needed pilots, lots of them. Black people wanted to join the Army Air Force, but the US military was still not convinced of their ability. It did not want to mix black pilots with white pilots, and the Army still claimed that black people did not have the right stuff to fly in a war. Black people insisted they were just as capable as anyone else. For them, the war was a chance for a double victory. A double victory meant they wanted to stop the Axis power overseas and help put an end to racism at home. Even before the US entered the war, the black CPTP student named Fancy Williams filed a lawsuit against the army. A lawsuit is a complaint that must be settled in court. Williams' lawsuit said the army had to prove that black men could not fly, but the success of CPTP program at Tuskegee and other black men institutions was clear proof that black people could fly. On January 16, 1941, the army agreed to form an all-black squadron. A squadron is a group of pilots, instructors, mechanics, and other support staff. So William dropped this lawsuit. A new military airfield was built not far from Merton. The men could train at Merton and the new Tuskegee Army Airfield. Williams would go on to become one of the 992 pilots to graduate from the Tuskegee Army's field program. It was known as the Tuskegee Experiment because the Army did not think it would succeed. It would be up to the newly trained black pilots to prove the military wrong. On July 19, 1941, the Tuskegee... not our chapter. I'm sorry. Thank you for listening. This was Jason Yu reading Who Were the Tuskegee Airmen, Chapter 1 to Chapter 4. I hope you like it, subscribe, and you'll see another video of me reading, 2 more videos of me reading Who Are the Tuskegee Airmen. I hope you like it, and I will go off and make another video all by myself. Thank you.